This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
"5 minutes till the main event. Is this the way my life was spent? Now the winter of my discontent is about to turn a new year. The minister, he's pleading me to save myself. He's reading me apocalyptic verses from a book. I squint my eyes to look at him and said, save your stories, Savior please. There's nothing left, there's nothing here for me. You will listen, you will see. There's nothing left, salvation don't come free."
Hello and welcome to How Will I Die, starring Nicholas Howe. It's me, Nicholas Howe. Welcome back. Sorry about that 2-week break that we took, but moving is a bitch, and so am I. Since we're here, let's go ahead and just jump right in to the fun, fantastical story by watching The NickTube. This week, we're going to be exploring 2 Nicks, since it's a shorter episode. Let's get started and talk about the first Nick, who is very similar to myself. He's 24, he works from home just like me, and he has recently started a health kick. For sake of ease, we will call him Orange Nick. Now, Orange Nick has just recently started getting healthy. He finally got health insurance, which is a very nice thing for him to have, and he started seeing a doctor. His doctor happened to inform him that he was severely vitamin A deficient. So, he was prescribed some vitamin A supplements, as well as told to start eating a bunch of vegetables. Since Orange Nick is the way he is, he hyper-focused on the vegetable part and just started chowing down. Rather than a generalized vegetable, however, he focused on one vegetable that, hey, it makes you better, right? And that vegetable was carrots. So he was drinking carrot juice, eating full carrots constantly. If he was awake, he was nomming on some carrots. The problem is, at a certain point, he was eating too many carrots. Too much vitamin A was going into his system. Now, if you don't know, which Orange Nick didn't, vitamin A is something that, like all vitamins, you shouldn't take in a whole bunch of. The supplements and the carrots started to fry his liver. Obviously, it didn't start off with liver failure. At first, he started to just kind of feel drowsy. He had some abdominal pain, but that is a normal thing for all Nicholases across the multiverse. And he also started having migraines, which, again, is a sadly normal thing across the multiverse. But then he started to feel really, really rough. His skin started to turn a different color. He started to become yellow. Looking it up online, he assumed he was jaundiced, which is a very fun thing to have. It's super not. It means your kidneys are failing. But he was like, alright, it's fine. I know what it is. I know that it won't kill me right away. So I'm just going to take maybe like 2 or 3 days before going to see my doctor, because his next doctor's visit was in a couple of days. The first day went by really badly for him. See, when you're very, very sick, you have a bad day. When you're very, very sick and you don't go to the doctors because you're an idiot, you have an even worse day. So the next day, after he figured out he was jaundiced, he was in such immense pain. But Orange Nick lives in America, so he is not going to be taking an ambulance ride anywhere, and he doesn't own a car. So he decided to give it one more day, and that was a poor decision, both literally and figuratively. As he fell asleep, writhing in pain, that was it, because he didn't wake up the next morning. What had happened was all of his organs had shut down, including his heart, his brain, his lungs. Therefore, he was dead, which was a fun sight for his roommates to walk in 3 days later and find out that he was dead. And that is how Orange Nick died. Taking a trip to the past for the second Nick, aka Eating Nick, we find a 38-year-old version of me in 1750 of this version of Earth's years. And this Nicholas is a doctor. Very fun, weird choice, but I guess in 1750 there weren't comic books to write about, or movies. Much like the regular me, the me in this world that's watching him, there are two facts about Eating Nicholas that need to be discussed. The first fact is that we both have stomach problems. What I mean by that is we both have issues with eating literally any food at all. The second fact is that we don't care about that and will eat anything at all. That being said, when we're challenged to do something like eat, we do it. And that's what happened to Eating Nick. See, he had saved someone's life and he was invited over to their manor. You know, how people did back in the days. And they threw a feast in his honor. And then his friend, who was also there, was like, hey Nick, or I guess, hey Dr. Nick, I dare you to eat as much as physically possible and then some. And Eating Nick, not being a little bitch, did it, which was a bad idea because what happened was he ate too much food. Not only did he eat too much food, he gorged himself so much that his stomach actually exploded from being too full. And seeing as how he was the only doctor in the room, no one could help him. There also weren't ambulances back then. And that was the end of Eating Nick. The structure of this week's episode is going to be a little bit different because I'm going to be doing the reason that I chose these topics here and then get the history of them after the break. The idea for Orange Nick came to me very recently because I happened to casually be eating some carrots, and after I got done eating said carrots, I had a super bad migraine, and also my stomach really hurt. And I was like, okay, cool, I'm dying. So I laid down and went to sleep. It was about 2 in the afternoon, so if that says anything about how smart I am about health issues, there you go. The other one I kind of wanted to talk about because I have real problems with food in general, but I also thought that it was really funny of a thing to talk about. To have someone throw a feast for you and then you die because of that feast. Those are the reasons that I wanted to talk about these topics this week. Also, for some reason, I'm super hungry and I really wanted to talk about food.
Hi, it's Audra
Jason,
and Matt.
from Drinkopedia Podcast.
We're a bad education podcast that's like drunk history for the full curriculum.
we have new episodes every Thursday, and you can find us on most major podcast platforms.
Join us at the bar and follow us on Twitter at Drinkopedia Pod.
Welcome to the middle section where I talk about things and stuff and things and stuff and things and stuff. It's me, your host, Nicholas Howe, here in the middle section, and I have some things and stuff to talk about. Let's go. This week's episode marks a new kind of setup, so things will be a little bit different in episodes here on out. As I stated in my last episode, I've moved out to LA and I am quote-unquote living it up. And by that, I mean I'm working way more than I thought I was going to. But that's fine, because reasons that I can't think of right now. But it also gives me a lot of opportunities to do cool things, including, like I mentioned in the last episode, going to the Museum of Death here in LA and doing some cool little tours of really well-known death things. Death has become a huge part of my life, and I'm not saying that I hate that, but also it's a weird conversation starter, but it is a conversation starter. As far as housekeeping, let's go ahead and talk about a few things that have changed behind the scenes. Other than the fact that I'm in a new house, I still have some stickers available, and I know you don't care about my stickers, but I do, and I want them. God, take my dang stickers. Also, we have merch available. It's currently just t-shirts and sweaters. Not sweaters, but like sweatshirts. And if you want one, go ahead and check it out on the Big Heads Media store page. There's a link to it somewhere, I'm sure. Also, I've been doing a lot more writing for a few different sites now. Obviously, last time I mentioned it, I was writing for CBR.com, which is comicbookresources.com. Recently, I've started writing for Screen Rant as well. If you would like to check those out, go ahead and follow my personal Twitter at Plasmatic210. Exactly how it sounds is exactly how it's spelled. I've really enjoyed writing those things, and if you want to read them and give me those gorgeous views and maybe some comments on them, go ahead and do that. I'm not quite sure if I'm going to be able to get back to a weekly posting right now. I'm going to try, but things come up and I'm definitely going to try. I'm going to push for it. If it doesn't happen, I'm so sorry. But know that I have a lot of stuff to talk about, but I also have a lot of things to do. And that's going to be it for this middle section. I hope you guys are enjoying the show and enjoy it till the end. We do have a Spam Slam this week, which is very fun. And also, the history of these stories. I love that. That's the learning part of this. That's why I can say that this show is educational. It's not really, but I can say it is. Anyways, let's go ahead and jump back into it.
Calling all sports fans, are you looking for an alternate source for sports news, scores, takes, and updates? Well, look no further on Franchise Tag Sports Podcast, hosted by me, Eric Salas. With the help of frequent guests, we'll give you all the latest and greatest on sports. That's right, I'm talking NFL, the occasional NBA and MLB, and yes, a lot more NFL. I've always loved watching the NFL, and there's no better way to talk sports than flipping on a microphone and giving my opinions on what goes on around the league. Tune in every week for brand new episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you stream your podcasts. You can also find us on Twitter at Franchise Tag Pod and on Instagram at Franchise Tag Sports. It's the Franchise Tag Sports Podcast. We got the sports, you just gotta press play.
So I'm sure some of you have heard the tale of the man who ate carrots and then died from eating so much of them. Now, there are some discrepancies in that story. The biggest discrepancy is the fact that carrots don't actually have vitamin A, and that's the reason that he technically died. So, the man who is named Basil Brown, who died in 1974, actually died from vitamin A poisoning, which is also called hypervitaminosis, which is a toxicity to the system. Basically, he was ingesting so much of a certain vitamin, in this case vitamin A, that he eventually died of liver failure. Now, the problem is that he was also at the time drinking about a gallon of carrot juice a day, and his skin was turning a bright yellow when he died. Now, obviously, that can happen from the actual disease of hypervitaminosis. But because technology and science hadn't come that far yet, his death was ruled partially caused by carrots, which is wild. The second death of this episode is a little more interesting because the person who died truly died from a heavy ego. Julien Offray de la Mettrie, or however you say it, because I'm really guessing here, was a French physician and philosopher, so he was a doctor, and he specifically focused on the mind and body, but he wrote books as well. And one of his most famous books was L'Homme Machine, or Man a Machine. The book argues that humans are practically machines just because mental thought is required for body actions. It's a whole thing that I'm not going to get into. But the point is, he was so full of himself, and he had actually saved a man's life by curing him of his illness. The man was an ambassador, and so the ambassador held a feast in his honor. What La Mettrie did was just shove food down his mouth, just tons of it. There isn't quite a report on what actually happened, since it was in 1750 something. Basically, he ate so much food, gorged himself, and then died of a stomach illness later. At some point, he had a fever, but that's not conclusive to what actually happened. But he did die in the home of the ambassador, which is kind of sad, but also a little bit funny. For this week's Spam Slam, we're talking about a comment made by someone named Amy. This is a comment that was made on a post on the Big Heads Media website, a post about a podcast. So let's get into it. This is by Amy. It is appropriate time to make some plans for the future, and it's time to be happy. I've learned this post, and if I could, I desire to counsel you some fascinating things or suggestions. Maybe you could write subsequent articles regarding this article. I desire to read even more things. Approximately it. It is perfect time to make some plans for the future, and it is time to be happy. I've read this post, and if I could get, I desire to suggest to you a few interesting things or suggestions. Maybe you can write next articles referring to this article. I want to read more things about it. It's the best time to make some plans for the future and time to be happy. I've read this post, and if I could, I want to suggest you a few things or tips. Maybe you could write next article referring to this article. I desire to read more things about it. Nissan.com. That's going to do it for this week's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'm sorry it's a bit shorter than most episodes are. Sorry about calling myself a bitch so much in this episode. I'm in, I think, a weird headspace at 4 o'clock in the morning. That's where the episode is going to end. But remember, death is coming. So why worry about the inevitable? Focus on the possibilities.
5 minutes till they pull the switch. They say you'll only feel an itch, but they watch the catatonic twitch and the smoke that flows around you. There beneath the gamma rays, watch my soul just burn away. Oh, don't you even try to pray, my fate is predetermined. You won't see me returning, and save your stories, save your please. There's nothing left, there's nothing here for me. You will listen, you will see. There's nothing left, salvation.